pandemonium. Use my fangs to murder ya. Yo soy la diosa, los demonios no me controlan. Soy culebra.
All right, thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode of Nightmare on Sedgwick Avenue. This is season 4, episode, 8 now, I believe. And today I have a really dope special guest. I've been meaning to have him on since like a couple seasons back, but finally came around full circle. He goes by Wesley, but he has a podcast called Drop the Mic, which we'll be talking about. He's here from San Diego, and then he also has screenings that he does with the digital gym that's run by the Media Arts Center. So without further ado, let me bring him on the screen here. Hey, Wes.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thank you again for, taking the time to meet today and get to know you a little bit more. I obviously give it a brief introduction, but if you don't mind, just kind of like talking about what it is that you do. Like obviously you're a podcast host, and then you also have like screenings that you do. If you want to just talk about a little bit about what you do and how you got into all this.
Sure. Okay. So my name is Wesley Swanson. I've lived in San Diego my entire life. So about 5.5 years ago, I started a pop culture podcast called Drop the Mic with a few of my friends, and we've been going strong ever since. We basically do a movie review every week. Every weekend, we release new content, and we talk about like fresh like pop culture news, what's going on in Hollywood, as well as weekly recommendations. So what all the co-hosts have been watching from episode to episode. So it's been pretty fun. I also have my own how would you say, like, enamel pin shop. I go by a Pin Apart, and I recently merged with one of my best friends, Susie Soto, also has a shop called House of Shar. So we combined our two shops together, and so we release how do you say art or wearable art together.
Oh, okay, so that's pretty dope. Yeah, and I've seen it, like you have at some of the screenings too, right? Where you have like your little like merch table going on and everything.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. And I'll show it in a second too, because I can show like your actual IG. So I'll show the other one too, the Pin Apart. And then obviously, like I said, you do your podcast and everything. How did that come about though? Like when did that start, or where did the idea come from, like to do like movie reviews and with your friends and start a podcast?
Awesome. Thank you for asking. So about was 5 years ago, because it was the same year that I decided to start it. I used to work at, and I can say this because I don't work there anymore, the San Diego Convention Center, right, where of course the mecca of all geek stuff kind of comes together is San Diego Comic-Con International. And one of my favorite filmmakers and comedians, Kevin Smith, he usually does something like in Hall H, right? Mm-hmm. And so this one year, 5 years ago, he had a big kind of panel for himself, and he just kind of just talks about life and gives advice and does all this kind of cool stuff. So I happened to be working in Hall H for that Comic-Con, and he basically was talking about how, he loves to podcast, and it's so interesting because he is able to create these memories, record these memories, and share them with the public. But they really are for him, where he'll interview, like, he dropped examples, like he interviewed his mom, and then while she was on edibles.
That's cool.
Yes. So going back to that, basically he dropped this really cool example where he was saying how he interviewed his mom while she was on edibles, and that it was like being able to document all of these things was super interesting in a way, like you're creating these singular time capsules to go back in time and relive them later on when family members or friends or whoever maybe have passed on by this time, that it's super interesting and really cool. And that really spoke to me, and I was like, I could do this. Why don't I start a podcast? And that's where the idea stemmed from. And then, of course, I grew up in a household that was very much full of kind of pop culture and movies and television. And so that's what I know. And that's, I guess, why I chose that kind of content to releasing, I suppose.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but it's true. Yeah, you are capturing moments that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten, if you hadn't done like actually recording this stuff. And why drop the mic? Obviously, like it's like a common like thing where we're like, oh, drop the mic type of thing. But what made you name it that?
That's a hard one. I just thought it sounded cool, and at the time when I researched there was drop the mic, but no podcasts when we started this one.
Hmm.
So that I was, I guess, just trying to be, how do you say, like funny, like in a snarky way, just like drop the mic. I
Yeah,
just thought it rolled off the tongue,
yeah,
and when you how do you say when you're telling somebody or pitching your idea, it sounds like, oh, what, drop the mic, like epic almost, I
yeah.
guess.
That's true. That's pretty cool. And what made you like? Obviously, like you said, you review all types of movies, but I know during the fall you mentioned that you do like mostly focus on horror films. Like, obviously, there's like a horror podcast. So, what made you fall in love with like the horror genre?
Well, I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandmother in particular was always kind of interested in the kind of like that macabre culture like Poltergeist and Nightmare on Elm Street and the original Halloween. So it kind of stemmed from there. As those movies were just always in the house, and I would watch those tapes on a regular basis, and it kind of fueled my interest in seeking more. And so I love movies in general, and
Mhm.
television in general, but I always kind of lean towards like the darker stuff because it's more fun, and I feel like you're able to get away, push the envelope, and more than you can with like other, I guess, genres and subgenres.
Yeah, that's true. And one thing I like to ask people, because not all horror films have to scare you, but like for you, what do you think it's like the why we love to be scared? Like, what do you think it's about us humans that we enjoy being scared? For those that love horror movies, of course.
Uh, that's a kind of a loaded question, but I would say personally, like the fear of the unknown and the
Hmm.
psychology behind it is very interesting. That it's kind of like when you go to a theme park and certain people hate roller coasters and certain people love that feeling, even though it's super weird. But it's almost like you can't really explain why you're drawn to it. It's just
Yeah,
kind of it is, it just is.
that's true. Yeah, and for sure, like an adrenaline type of rush, kind of like what
Mhm.
like you said, like the roller coaster people. Because for me, like I hate roller coasters, but being scared is like I don't know, it like makes you feel like you're alive. Like it's like I'm still alive with that when you get that
Yeah,
jump scare. Like actually just today I was like opening my door and like some Amazon guy was like just there and I just fucking got scared. I was like, oh shit. um, and what do you think for you? What does fear mean to you? Like, how do you define fear?
oh wow. You're really bringing it with these
And
questions today.
that we
How do
come
I
back to
define fear?
it.
Okay, I'll break it down like this. So although I love like the slasher kind of subgenre, what is scary to me is the more paranormal because you can't physically fight a ghost or a poltergeist or a phenomenon like that. You're almost helpless. So I guess like to break it down, the I guess fear of what happens after death
Hmm.
and and the fear, I guess, of the unknown is that's what's deeply scary to me is just all of these unexplained occurrences and what if they were to happen to you, I guess. I don't know if
Yeah.
that answers.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, that's true though. Yeah, because everybody defines it different. Like for me, like I had another interview I did this week too for the podcast, and I told them like for me, the newest thing that's scary to me. Like before, when I was a kid, it obviously it's like the scary like monsters or whatever. But now as I've
Mhm.
grown older, it's like more films, kind of like I know it's like a mixed review, but like Hereditary because it's like things that are in the real world that are real that can happen to you, like not knowing a family member like that. The Hereditary is like a perfect example of like not knowing your own family member, like that they were part of a cult and all this stuff. Or like
Oh.
there was another film I watched, The Innocents. I don't know if you heard of it, but it's like I think it's like Norwegian. It just came out this year, I think, and it's about little
Hmm.
kids that have like superpowers, but how it can go wrong because kids are all filled of emotion, and that's how they react to things. So like imagine having superpowers and being like an emotional kid, and like your parent pisses you off, like like so stuff like that, like unsettling. For me, that's what fear is. Stuff that hits closer to home, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
and for you, what's like, do you have like a greatest fear? Have you overcome it, or do you think you ever will if you haven't?
Uh, Greatest fear. I would say my top two would be probably I have a fear of heights that I don't really talk about very often, and then I have a weird phobia with driving, which is why I don't. If you know me, you know that I've never. I know how to drive, but
Hmm.
I don't go out of my way to drive in real life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I guess I haven't really overcome it yet.
Where did that fear come from? You think like was there like a car accident or something, or is just something that's just kind of like just kind of creeps you out?
Yeah, as a kid, my mother was a super kind of reckless driver.
Uh-huh.
Sorry to put her on blast with this, but yeah, it kind of stems from that. It was just I just kind of lost interest after that, and it's also like maybe no pun intended, like a hereditary genetic thing where a lot of people in my family don't drive or have a phobia of it. So I think it was just passed down too as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, like me, I'm scared of heights for sure. Like that's one thing. Like I don't do roller coasters. Obviously, if I have to fly somewhere, I will, but it's not like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
For you, like obviously with the driving, like the fear of driving and all that stuff. Like, do you feel like because we talk about it a lot, like in the group that I hang out with, it's like facing, your fears. Like, would you ever like try to like overcome it, or you think it's something that's like it's too scary, like I might just like leave it alone, or what do you think?
No, yeah, I want to.
Yeah.
I definitely it's on my list of things to overcome. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We'll manifest that for you. um, and what would be like your favorite scary movie? Or I usually ask for the top five, but I know it constantly changes for people. Like for me, it does. But what would be yours?
Top horror film ever.
Yeah, top five
Wow.
if you can.
Top five. Well, my top two would probably be, or top three. I'll go number one, The Exorcist. Number two, John Carpenter's original Halloween '78. Number three, The Thing. Four, Sam Raimi's original Evil Dead. And five, I'll say A Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors.
Okay, good picks. um, for you, like, what would be? Because I usually like to ask people, like, obviously there's all these remakes, like originals. But for you, what's one like? If you would like to have something to have like seen on the screen, like a horror movie, like what would you like to see? Like what kind of horror movie would you like to see made on the big screen that you haven't seen before?
That I haven't seen before. Can you elaborate more on
Like
that?
if you could create your own horror movie, pretty much, like
Hmm.
what would you create?
I like weird movies like Green Room, where
Hmm.
they there's this tension created when these people get into this kind of almost surreal scenario.
Hmm.
Uh, so not I wouldn't remake Green Room, but
Hmm.
I tend to lean towards movies like that where just shit hits the fan real quick, but it's also grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Uh, I love that style, you know?
Yeah, that's a good one because I like it because yeah, you can start to see the people's characters too, like how would what would they do in those scenarios? Like, would you be the bad guy or the good guy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I just finished watching I'm doing that Nightmare on Film Street like a horror movie challenge where it's like a horror movie a day or whatever and today's like
Me
the
too.
Oh, you do? Okay, cool. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was the Game Gone Wrong, right? So I picked
Oh,
Circle because I've never seen it, and I was it's more psychological. I don't even think it was horror for me. Like after I finished watching it, but it kind of reminded me of what you were just talking about, like where these people are put in this like situation. They have to like figure out who they want to survive, and it's like all these people like show like their true colors. Like people are homophobic, racist, like all this shit, and I'm like, damn, like I think I'm like, what would I do in those like in that scenario? Like, because it's like people's lives are on your hands, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and for you, how do you feel like the horror genre is doing like in this era? Like, do you feel like it's thriving? Like, do you like the movies that are coming out, or do you think they can be better? Like, what's your take on the horror genre right now?
As a fan, first and foremost, I'm just happy to be alive and in this kind of new golden age of horror. Whether,
Yeah.
not all of them are bangers. I
Mhm.
understand that. But like I said, I'm just happy to be still in my youth and seeing all of this like a resurgence for the subgenre. So, with that, I'm just very, very thankful. And yeah, to answer your question, I'm I'm just happy that there's enough of an audience where studios are at least trying to put stuff out.
Yeah.
Um, like the fact that 2018's Halloween made I feel like that really put horror back on the market or on the map, um, as far as studios really figuring out like, oh yeah, people will go out and pay money to see this type of stuff. So you can say what you want about
Yeah.
that movie,
Yeah.
but it really it helped for our culture, the subculture, as far as Hollywood really accepting, embracing horror, and at least trying to give us stuff. So I'm happy.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. And what do you like? What's the latest, like maybe like a newest horror movie that you've seen that you've liked, like recently in the past maybe decade?
Oh, I really really liked X and Pearl from Ty West.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I enjoyed X. I haven't seen Pro yet. I need to watch that one. I've heard good things about it, like the
Yeah,
monologue at the end or something.
yeah. If you liked X, which I'm pretty sure you did, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I loved it.
you
Yeah.
you'll love Pearl. It's like Wizard of Oz on acid or something.
Oh my god. And he has another one coming up, right? Like a third, it's gonna be like a trilogy, right? I think he said.
Yeah, it's called Maxine, so it's going to go back
Nice.
into basically show you what happens after she
She
uh,
survives.
spoilers, but yeah,
Yeah.
after, what happens to Maxine after the events of X.
Oh, that's gonna be dope. Yeah, I'm excited. I think like he should win an award for that, like because I was like he did all these like during the pandemic. I'm like I don't think I've seen anybody do like a back to back. Maybe I could be wrong, but I don't think I've seen somebody do a back to back in the same year, like the same director. I don't know if you even know, but he should
No,
get an award for that.
no, that's something that's really not done too often, and I believe what I read was that Ty West had what budget left over from X, so he
Hmm.
shot the prequel in secret. So A24 didn't even know that he was doing this. It was like
Oh,
a very like top secret thing, and that's why he was able to release both, like, because X just came out earlier this
yeah, this
year.
year, yeah,
Oh, Pearl's already out and people are loving it, so it's a huge kind of milestone, I think, especially for horror, and it makes me excited to because he's going to start, hopefully he starts a trend, and
yeah.
other films will be inventive like that because it's
Yeah, that'd
cool.
be cool. Because I mean, I wonder if Maxine is gonna come out before the year ends. I don't know if they've done a release date yet, but that'd be cool if it came out at Christmas or something, you
Yeah,
know. um, and then one thing I wanted to talk about with you as well, and I think it was like I've gone to some of these screenings before, like way before the pandemic happened, kind of put a pause to it, but I've seen that it's picked up again. So you do these screenings with the Digital Gym. Shout out to them. Um,
yeah.
and you do all different types, like I said, types of movies. You just had Ghost Dog, right? I believe is the
Yes.
yeah. Can you talk about like that partnership or how it happened and what your goal is with the screenings?
could you ask me one more time? You
Oh,
were cutting out.
oh, sorry. I said, could you talk a little bit about like the partnership you had with the digital gym and how that came about and what your goal is with the screenings?
Okay, yeah. So when I started my podcast, I had no idea that it was going to get so serious, but I've invested so much money into equipment and obviously time releasing. Not a lot of podcasts release content every week the way
Yeah.
that we do. And I take a lot of pride in that, right? But and I just wanted to do more for the community. And I know as much as I love San Diego, there's not a lot of how do you say, like special screenings where they
Yeah.
do movies maybe that are vintage stuff, retro stuff, or just
Mhm.
like, for example, like when the Logan Noir stuff dropped, they only did that like in LA and maybe New York. It was very specific areas. So then in my head I was like, why don't we take the podcast as a platform and do something for our community where we bring this, give them a night where they can like experience something like this on the big screen. So it was just coming from the perspective of a fan that wanted to do more. And it took me a while to get in like on good terms with Digital Gym, where they knew me,
Mhm.
and we developed a great relationship. Shout out to Christian Perez Franco, who's been so kind to me, one of the managers over there. But yeah, so a few years ago we did, what was the first one we did ever, was the Logan Noir Black and White, which
Okay.
was a sold out crowd.
That's cool.
And then maybe a year or two later, we did Mad Max Fury Road, but the black and chrome edition, which was
Mhm.
also sold out. Um, Ironically, we did the Evil Dead 2013, like maybe a year after that, um, which is, I have an episode coming out soon. Cheap plug. And then and then of course the one that you went to was, we did the Faculty
Faculty.
right before
Yeah.
the pandemic. Um, and then Ghost Dog. I feel like I'm forgetting one, but you guys get the picture.
Yeah.
Um, it's just, it's a whole lot of fun, and it's a way to kind of interact with your listeners or get people who maybe are unfamiliar with the podcast, like in the county, to interact and just give back to the community, because that's what it's all about, you know?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And how did that what's the next like screening that you guys have coming up? Is there do you guys kind of like organize it as it comes, or how in advance do you guys plan these screenings?
So these, because, or at least usually, we have to negotiate with the studios to
Mhm.
see what they're willing to do.
Mhm.
So um, the next one that I'm trying to do is something that came out recently, but because it's not concrete, I don't really want to say on
Okay.
there in case it doesn't happen, but it's going to be awesome, and I think you'll be into it too.
Okay.
It came out within the last couple of months, and it was a big deal.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
And then you're shooting for this month or you're shooting for next month, do you think? Because it depends on the studio, right? When they get back to you, or
yeah. So hopefully, because we already did Ghost Dog for October, we're gonna shoot for either November or December.
okay, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely stay tuned for that. Yeah, I think it's really cool what you're doing because, like you said, like not a lot of cinemas or like other theaters do that anymore. I think I was just talking about that with Cinebeth, where she does with KPBS, and we're talking about how she does her events too, where she screens films, but not a
Mhm.
lot of people screen like old school films, even if they're like in the 90s. They're not, for me, it's not old school, but for for like the younger generation, like, oh, super old school, or like 80s,
Yeah.
70s, all that stuff. It's cool to see that, on the big screen if you've never seen it, to get to be able to see it again. Because like for me, like I love going to see those films. Like Scream 2 is coming up on its anniversary. I think it's like the 25th, I believe. And they're gonna be
25th. Yeah.
right, and then they're gonna be like showing it in theaters, and it's cool because I never got a chance to go see it. I think I was like a kid when that movie came out, so it's
Hmm.
kind of cool that you're doing that for for the audience, and even for younger people that have never seen the movie too, getting the opportunity to like see a movie that they've never seen.
Yeah, because they might have fallen in love with it, when they were little and at home. So
Hmm.
it's just a a great opportunity to see certain stuff, certain films like in a different format or the way that it was originally intended, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Congrats on that. And I
Thank-
hope it like keeps, going because that's really cool for the community and everything. And talking about like the community and all that, like one thing I like to ask, because I know San Diego, we have like little patches of like a horror community, but we don't have it, I guess, compared to like LA or like other places like that. Like I think Orange County too has like a huge horror community. For you, what do you think? Do you think San Diego has like a thriving horror community, or why and why not? And how do you think we can help to like make it more more big, I guess, to for lack of better words.
Um, I would like to think that we have a big horror community down here. I
Hmm.
think that it really is up to us that we go out and support, especially like in theaters, like new films when they come out. Like if you don't show up,
Hmm.
a good example of this would be when I went opening or preview night to see Candyman,
Hmm.
and I was one of maybe five like in a giant theater, and that movie was amazing. So it's
Yeah.
like, come on, guys, you got to come out. But I believe that we do have a thriving community, but you guys got to make the effort, or they're gonna stop like producing these movies, and then everyone's gonna be sad, you know?
Yeah. And what do you think about like having events? You know how like they have like in Orange County, I think they just had like the October Village. I think like Witches Brew, like they have like little collectives, like art
Yes.
collectives, I guess. Like, what do you think for here for San Diego? Because I know like I just interviewed like Malvicho, shout out to them. They have like a horror store in Logan.
Yeah.
Like places like that. Like, how do you think we can like grow that? You think, or is it just kind of like you said, like maybe like get gathering of minds and like getting everybody together to like be able to have something like that?
Yeah, I think it's just well, don't they have, what is it called, horrorgasm or something at the
Yes, or
Queen Bee?
shout out to them too. Yeah.
Things like that is how collectively like fans are going to come out, or just because you can have fans that are isolated and maybe
That's
hermits
true.
the way that you and I are,
Yeah.
where they don't go very much, and
Yeah.
they they're just unaware. So I think it's just boils down to marketing and really filling out and making it known that there are like-minded people in the county, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 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 I agree. And for you, like obviously we just talked about what you have going on with the digital gym and then your podcast. Like for you, what has been your greatest like accomplishment so far, either creatively or personally?
Oh, just I think, wow, that's hard. Just keeping, I think, not missing like a single episode. If
Hmm.
anything, sometimes we release bonus episodes, so that'll be two episodes in one week. And so for almost 5.5 years, we haven't missed anything for every week.
Oh
And so I
wow.
take, yeah, like especially going through the pandemic and everything that happened with that. All the co-hosts had to start patching in, remotely for safety reasons and stuff, and
Hmm.
and we were able to kind of keep pushing on, and I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Like, they keep it going. Like, cause I know I get lazy sometimes where it's like, oh, I don't want to drop anything. So that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Um, And what's some advice you would give to someone who's trying to start a podcast?
I would say just listen to your instincts and invest in good mic rigs and like just make sure your gear is reliable, and don't listen to singular people where they're trying to tell you to cut cut down your content, or it's too long, or make it short, because we live in
Hmm.
this YouTube generation, sadly, where a lot of people, I feel like, they have a shorter attention spans,
Yeah.
and that's not a, I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody or anything, but I just feel like it's part of the culture now where we want TikTok stuff that's really fast and tells us something, and then we move on to the next, you know?
Yeah.
But if you have an idea for a podcast, don't necessarily listen to singular criticism, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a good advice. Yeah, because I agree on that part about like the short attention span. Like I never try to like that's one thing when I started the podcast, I was like, I'm not gonna limit myself. Like I would like to have an hour just because me myself, I love like watching interviews. But I know there's like the younger generation at least, or and maybe even the older people too, some where they just want to take in content right away, like you said, get to the point and then move on to the next thing. But
Yeah.
um and back to like horror and everything, like for you, obviously you do the drop the mic and you speak about the movies and all that. For you, who would be your like favorite horror director, or like same thing, top five if you can't think of just one?
Oh, favorite horror director. Um, wow. Okay. I would say one, Wes Craven, R.I.P.
Hmm.
We share the same birthday, which is pretty rad.
Oh
Uh,
well.
uh, uh, two, John Carpenter, of course. Three, William Friedkin. Uh, four, uh, Jordan Peele.
Hmm.
And five, we'll say Ari Aster.
Okay, yeah, those are good picks. Yeah, the first two are mine too. John Carpenter and Wes Craven are always up there for me. Um, and for you, like, because we talked about remakes and stuff like that. What do you prefer, versus like remakes versus originals? Does it even matter to you, or what are your thoughts on that?
Do I, so are you asking, do I prefer originals over remakes or remakes over originals?
Yeah, exactly. Either or, vice versa. Hmm.
Always, I'm going to always lean towards the originals, no matter how old they are.
Hmm.
But, going back to the newest episode that I'm about to release, like, there's always like a few in the bunch that are almost as good as the original. So if
Yeah.
I had to pick a thing like Evil Dead 2013, it kind of did its own thing and it took away the humor, and I thought it was very, very effective because of the fact that it's all practical effects.
Yeah.
So sometimes like there are exceptions, but there's a lot of remakes and reboots, and we're in this culture where that's becoming the norm, where people are afraid to create original content
Yeah.
unless you're, Jordan Peele or somebody who has the money. I feel like a lot of people are afraid to make new stuff, so then they tend to go back. Just like an example is AMC is putting out like an interview with the vampire show that's coming out soon, or maybe it's already out. But
Uh-huh.
I guess what I'm saying is, don't be afraid and make new stuff
Yeah,
too,
I agree.
because regurgitating or rehashing stuff that we already seen is only going to last so long. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true. Unless it's something where it was bad to begin with and they can make it better, then maybe, like I agree with
Yeah.
the Evil Dead was like a good one. The Thing, obviously John Carpenter's The Thing was a good one too. So there's like a few, like you said, a few in the bunch. Um, any like horror recommendations, like movies that you feel like are slept on, maybe like a hidden gem that you don't think are like often recognized?
A big one, and I'll shout out Nightmare on Film Street because I'm doing the 31-day horror challenge as well. For Australian, I picked Wolf Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Um, been posting, and I feel like nobody, for some reason, I thought that was a big deal when it came out, like back in 2004, 2005. but I feel like that one is slept on, and I'm not sure if it's because it's considered foreign or something, but
Hmm.
that's an amazing film. It's pretty grimy and not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
You know, it's good.
I have to rewatch that one because I saw that one on the list and I had seen it, but I saw it a long time ago. And wasn't there like a sequel? I know the sequel was probably like bad, but I remember there was like a sequel to it or whatever. And I remember seeing the first one maybe in theaters, but I honestly can't recall if it was good. So good thing you're saying it is good
Yeah,
because I couldn't remember.
yeah. I
um,
saw.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I saw part two as well, and that's actually it's pretty good because they
Yeah.
bring back the same guy,
Okay.
John Jarrett, I believe his name is, and then
Uh-huh.
they did a Shutter original TV show that's
Oh.
so good.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to rewatch that then.
yeah, definitely.
And then the last one, I know you mentioned The Exorcist. For me, that's one of the scariest movies. But for you, in your opinion, what's like the scariest movie?
Oh, the scariest movie that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I would. I'd probably have to go with you and say, as far as the time that it came out and the fact that it really put like, how do you say, like Catholicism and the fact that exorcisms even exist, like in a cinematic way, it would be The Exorcist.
Yeah. Yeah. It has like, I don't know. I feel like the 70s was always, for all those films were scary to me. I don't know why. They have like this like grimy, like, I don't know, the way they filmed back then. I don't know what it was because even the Amityville, I don't even know if that was either late 70s or early 80s, like the second one. That one I can never watch, like finish watching that one. It's just creepy to me. Like the guy, even I think they use practical effects on that one too, but the one where the guy gets possessed is just creepy to me. It was just like I
Hmm.
can't do that.
Real
um
quick, real
yeah, go
quick,
ahead.
the since you brought up Amityville Horror, that's one that I feel like maybe this is a really hot take and it's going to piss off some of your listeners or viewers, but I kind of prefer the remake for the Amityville Horror with Ryan Reynolds over the original with James Brolin. I feel like the remake is a lot more scary, and of course, it's a polished studio horror film, but I just feel like it's done better, if that
Yes,
makes sense.
that's the first time I hear. Yeah, I like the first one. I mean, like the original, but the remake actually was decent with Ryan Reynolds. Like, and even they changed the backstory too, like the whole thing with the
Mhm.
guy living down there. I think, right? Because I don't think they had that in the original.
No, it's not in the original.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, that's it that I had for you. But usually before I, have the guests like leave and everything, like, is there anything that you want to like, shout out or share, any like social media and all that stuff?
Well, if you guys are interested in pop culture podcasts, please follow us at drop the mic underscore podcast on Instagram. And then we also have Twitter. The handle on Twitter is at drop the mic pod, which is it's pretty simple. And both me and my co-host James Warney are both attached to the Instagram account. So if you want to give us a follow and maybe recommend something for us to review, or even if you want to be a guest, we can patch you in. We're always open to that to get a kind of round table happening with different guests. That's always an option. So yeah, check us out. Also, if you want, check out my a pin apart shop. I believe the website itself is hoc.apa at bigcartel.com. We have a bunch of beautiful stuff on there: stickers, lapel pins, a bunch of crazy resin stuff that my best friend Susie Soto, who's super talented, does all by hand. So check that out.
That's pretty dope. Yeah, and keep going. Like I tell everybody like that I have on here. Like I pick and curate like who I pick as guests, and I think what you're doing is really dope and amazing. Like for the community, like the whole screenings, your podcast. I've been lucky to be part of one of your episodes and feel free to I'm willing to be on it again. That was fun. It was before the pandemic, so it was cool that we did it in person. But yeah, like go ahead and like he said, follow Drop the Mic podcast. And thank you again, Wes, for being on today.
Of course. Thank you for the invitation. It was so fun and it meant a lot to me. So I'm a big fan of everything you're doing as well. So don't ever stop.
Thank you. All right. Without further ado, then that was Wes from Drop the Mic podcast. Like I said, follow him on all social medias. His personal one is Swann, which is SWANN 619, or Drop the Mic as you saw on here, and I'll share that in the link. But thank you guys for tuning in for another episode. If you liked it, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel or our streaming as well. Thank you.